Workforce Development and Workplace Safety is about to convene. It's our intention to conduct this meeting with the courtesy and decorum expected of us as representatives. Please help us obtain that goal. We have a quorum present. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Lance.
Here.
Vice Chair Fraser. Representative Frames. Representative Hart.
Here.
Representative Hampton.
Here.
Representative Kelly.
Here.
Representative Nate. Here. Representative McManus. Representative Swan.
Yes.
Representative Walker.
Present.
Representative Weber.
Here.
Representative White.
Aye.
We will now open this hearing on House Bill number 1306, sponsored by Representative Love. Please begin when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. It's a pleasure to be able to come in front of you today to offer this bill. It's been numbered 1306. It has to do with prevailing wages.
Please use your mic,
Oh, I'm
Mark.
sorry. It has to do with the prevailing wages in the state of Missouri. And what it would do, it would allow most of the counties, with the exception, I believe, of 8 counties in the city of St. Louis, to use a different reporting method for those. It revises the definition of construction as it relates to the prevailing wage on public work projects by removing improvements, alterations, or major repairs, and specifies that it does not include maintenance work. Currently, it includes construction, reconstruction, improvement, enlargement, alteration, painting, decorating, or major repair. It also revises the definition of maintenance work to include repairs that restore existing facilities to a previous state or condition, or improve the utility or enhance the appearance of an existing facility, provided that the size, type, or extent of the existing facility is not changed. Maintenance work cannot include major repairs. That is defined as any work that exceeds the replacement cost of existing facilities. It also changes the way the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations determines the prevailing hourly rate of wages on public work projects. And then, as I mentioned earlier, for the city of St. Louis and the counties of Cass, Clay, Franklin, Jackson, Jefferson, Lincoln, St. Charles, and St. Louis, the prevailing hourly rate of wages will continue to be determined by consideration of the applicable wage rates established by collective bargaining agreements, if any, and the rates paid generally within those counties and cities. The applicable wage rates paid by members of a tax-exempt trade organization as defined in the bill also can be considered. For all other counties, the prevailing hourly rate of wages will be the medium hourly wage estimate for the construction and extraction occupational code, most closely resembling the occupational title as published in the latest United States Bureau of Labor Statistics by metropolitan and non-metropolitan area occupational employment wage estimates. Or if no hourly wage estimate can be determined, the median hourly wage rate will be for occupational code 47-0000 in the construction and extraction occupational code published in the latest United States Bureau of Labor Stats. The publication shall be the prevailing wage for such occupational titles. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Frame,
To inquire.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
So all the bills we've dealt with up to this point, these are the right to work bills in this committee, have all initially denied that they're going to cut wages across our state. But I'm guessing that's actually exactly what you're trying to do with this bill, though. Am I correct?
In many cases, it would be wage increases for places and cities that have no work going on. For instance, if you've got a city like in a small county that has a need to build new water lines and there's nothing being done because of the high cost of construction, by making this somewhat more affordable, we would create a tremendous amount of jobs.
We always make it a little bit more challenging, don't we, with trying to get to the truth. So the prevailing wages that's in those counties now that you claim no jobs are being created, there is a prevailing wage though, correct?
It's based on the,
And under that prevailing wage, your new rates would be a drop of wage, am I correct?
that is correct.
So what we're going to do here is cut some wages.
We're not gonna cut wages, we're gonna increase. We're not cutting these other counties, okay? We're
Right.
talking about counties.
In the counties affected, we're going to cut some wages.
I don't think it is. But any
Well,
county-
let me go through them again. I got a handout here.
I've got one too.
Okay, let's go through these together then.
And
Okay.
let's- Have you got one here on the, where I've got taken 4 rural counties?
Yes, sir.
Okay, those 4 counties are in District 125.
Okay.
You'll see at the top, they're listed as Benton, Cedar, Hickory, and St. Clair.
We've got a carpenter across the board, those 4 counties. Even Mason, we're looking at the same thing, right?
And over on the right hand is the Federal Bureau of Stats.
So right now today, those particular trades are paid the rate, the prevailing wage, which is the rate listed under the Benton, Cedar, Hickory. Am I correct?
And that includes benefits.
I understand. And you would like to see that taken over to a new rate.
By the Federal Bureau of Stats at $20.85.
Is $20.85 less or more than any one of the rates listed?
It's less.
Okay, so we're going to cut wages in the counties affected.
We're not, because that rate right there is already higher. Most carpenters in my area, the Amish work for $8 to $10, and most everybody else, if you're getting $15 an hour,
Well, the Mexicans pay.
but here's the fact, not very many people are.
I get it. You know what, let's cut to the chase here. So it's I like the media because they just go after the who, the what, the why, right? So who is you, right? What is wanting to cut wages? We can get to the why later on. I'm sure you have a very good reason why you want to cut wages, but that's what we're trying to do here. Make no mistake, your bill wants to cut wages of not only your constituents, but constituents all across this state. Am I not correct?
We're trying to increase the
Oh, my
wise
gosh.
investment of taxpayers' money.
Can I just get a straight answer? That is what we're doing, correct?
Well, the facts is right there. Yeah, you're gonna have less being paid to labor.
Thank you. Wow, I don't know why it takes so long. I don't know why folks just can't admit, that's what we're gonna do, we're gonna cut wages. And you wanna do this because, and we'll get to your part now, what you're trying to do is to bring some more jobs to this particular, your district and in other districts like yours across the state.
That's right.
Okay. The schools, in my district anyway, are ones who add prevailing wage jobs in many cases. We don't have the federal government out in my district very much. And we may build a county courthouse, but our schools are the ones that we see some growth in from time to time. Even small projects fall into that project labor agreement. Do you have your schools that are doing any kind of project labor agreements whatsoever?
We did this last year for the schools.
Yeah, I remember.
And at this moment, there's not any in my district that's done any construction that I know of.
Over the last couple of years, any kind of construction?
Oh, yeah, they've done in the last couple of years. We've had mostly completed. At the current time, I don't know of any schools that's actually entered into a new building project since we made this new policy last year.
When you say building project, you're not talking about a project labor agreement, you're talking about a project that would fall under prevailing wage, am I correct? Okay, and you haven't had any kind of school construction in the last couple of years?
Not in the last couple of years we have, but not in the last year since we adopted the new law last year.
What have you guys done the last couple of years? What have you guys done? What kind of projects have you done the last couple of years?
There's been some additional buildings built on, spaces, additional classroom spaces and things.
What school district would those be?
One of them would be listed there in Hickory County. Skyline Schools, I know, went through a building project, and I think Wheatland Schools that went through a building project.
Okay, these were rather large projects, right?
Yes, in the last couple of years they have.
Okay. And the other, you had Hickory and what you had?
You have what?
Hickory and what other school district you had?
Well, there's 2 in Hickory. There was the Skyline School Systems and the Wheatland.
Okay, yeah. Okay. And those are the only 2 you have?
I'm not positive. I don't know other than that, but I do know those 2 have went through building projects.
I've talked to several folks over at Division of Labor Standards who tell me that from time to time, even our schools aren't reporting prevailing wage projects, although they are supposed to be doing. Any of that going on in your district, you think?
Possibly could be if they're building in-house, like building a garage for a bus or building onto a low-ag building. Sometimes they do that sort of.
Well, these are real specific. What they say is when it falls under a prevailing wage law, they're supposed to report it over to Division of Labor Standards. Any of that going on in your district?
Not that I know of.
Okay. One thing I think it's fair to say, if you're trying to make this the case that we just can't afford these types of projects within our school districts or within our county government, that a reasonable tax actually is being imposed. Any idea what type of school tax is imposed over in your school districts?
Like assessed tax valuations?
Yes, sir.
For building projects, normally they go through lease cost purchases, they sell bonds. I mean, there's a variety of ways they raise money to do this.
There is. Probably the most common is just on the school tax itself, though, right? That we have a capital bonds project, or we have the operating levy, we may have some debt levy, those kinds of things.
They usually go to a vote of the people, and they pass a building project. It could be a levy, it could be a bond issue, in some cases it's a lease purchase.
Any of that been happening recently?
Well, most all of these schools, if they do build on, they do something of that nature.
But they haven't been building on, you say?
Not in this last year. There's not been any projects started that I know of since we adopted the new opting out of the wage that we did last year.
Okay, so I did some checking over in your district, and it looks like about $3.20 is about the average tax. If I try to put them all together and come up with some type of a levy, it looks like about $3.20, maybe $3.50. Let's say on $3.50 maybe for an average. I know in my own school district it's $4.56 per $100 assessed. Now I can understand that the property over in your county may be in fact less in valuation than that in my county, but in fact even with higher property values, we're taxing at a much higher rate. So we understand that there is indeed a need for good facilities within our school district. It seems like the folks over there have not met that same need and are taxing themselves at a much lower rate, asking the state to come in and pay additional costs. But now here you are in front of me, not asking the state to incur these costs, but asking construction workers across the state to incur this cost. These are $40,000, $50,000 a year construction workers. You're asking for a handout from those folks.
I guess that would be your way of looking at it.
Well, I don't know how else you could look at it. You haven't stepped to the plate to make a tax where you can pay for these folks, but you're saying your wage is too high. We're asking you to give us some type of entitlement here, some type of a handout here, and charge less in our counties because we're not willing to tax ourselves at a rate to employ you.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that there are building contractors in the counties that I mentioned, with the exclusion of the 8 counties and the city of St. Louis, that are able to do this work?
Are there contractors? There's contractors all over the state.
Okay, if they,
It's become a very small globe, very, very small world. We've got contractors not from the state but across
if
the...
there is a contractor in central Missouri
Right.
that builds construction with schools,
Right.
and all of his workmen are in that same area and
Right.
locality, they also are enjoying a lower cost of living. They are not expecting to make the high level of income that the prevailing wages is reported.
I remember quite well, gentlemen, I remember one of your such contractors coming to this committee last year and saying that he doesn't even bid on prevailing wage laws. Do you recall this? And why, I asked him, and his answer was, we don't want to give our workers that kind of taste of wages. To even allow them to know that that wage exists, we don't bid on those kinds of projects, because once we pay them that and they taste that decent wage, they're going to want it all the time. I cannot recall a more revolting, disgusting, despicable thing uttered at a committee hearing in my life, before or since.
Representative Frame, I
Yes.
think we're getting away from an inquiry and into a speech. Let's hold it to an inquiry, please.
Very well. The last point being, it seems to me that you could address this issue a couple of different ways. The first one being is that you could actually begin taxing yourself at a rate that would allow you to build decent facilities. The second one's even simpler. Have contractors start reporting these things over to where they're supposed to be doing it, but they don't seem to do that, and you don't put any teeth in the bill. Is that right?
You lost me on that.
Sure. If the prevailing wage is established by contractors reporting the wages that they pay. Now, this, I understand this is a voluntary system, but if your contractors were indeed reporting their wages to prevailing wage law standards, then the prevailing wage would indeed be a lower wage in your particular county.
I agree, but here's the reason we don't have prevailing wages in a lot of these counties. Most of the builders and the contractors, many of them are family. A lot of them do jobs by the foot, by the contractor, so they don't have hourly wages. Many times you'll have a crew of 5 or 6 that divide the money from a job and not paying each other by the hour. They do this for a variety of reasons, but that's pretty well what happens.
So they just can't seem to
So
report
as-
an hourly wage.
We just don't have hourly wages. Sometimes you make good, sometimes you don't.
Right. Okay. Last thing I'll say is that you had made a claim last year that you are indeed the Carhartt representative.
Yes, sir.
Still go by that?
You know, I was on the roof yesterday with a pair of Carhartt pants and a denim shirt, nailing down to the 6 purlins on the roof. Yes, sir, I'm a working man.
Okay. So you recall then when cars used to be made in America?
I do.
And you probably recall one at the time, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, when they stopped being made here and said were made in another country. And you probably can tell me the amount that the product decreased when they went from our nation over to another.
I doubt if they did.
They did not at all. We discussed this on the House floor. In fact, they went up $2. So the policy that a corporation or a business, because they have a drop of labor costs, how do you possibly expect that to equate into a drop of the cost of the project?
What-
You're the Carhartt representative, and you can
Okay.
take your namesake.
Well, since we're
When they
talking-
went from labor costs of American workers and converted them over to Mexican workers, there was no drop whatsoever in cost. Why is it you think that if we reduce wages, that in fact is going to reduce the cost of a new high school?
Okay, let me give you an example.
Yes,
We've
sir.
got $1 million public work project.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's say that it's a project that's about 50% labor and about 50% material.
Sure.
A lot of jobs, construction,
Right.
usually come out about like that.
Right.
Okay, if you set a cost of labor that building project has to pay, you're limited to how many square feet of building you can get, or how many feet of water line, or how many feet of sewer line. If you, now here's another way to look at that. There is not any secrets in bidding material. There's very little difference in what piping supplier you're gonna get or what water line supplier you're gonna get. So in a way, we've got our government spending taxpayer money telling the contractors basically about what you have to bid. There's no way to do a competitive bid. If you take and free up the labor part and let the contractors bid, you will have the freedom. So instead of having $1 million project and having so many square feet of building